What if I told you the Pentagon has classified footage of an underwater craft moving at 550 knots? Nearly 3 times faster than the fastest torpedo ever built. And what if the man who's seen this footage went public? Former Pentagon intelligence official Luis Elizondo has broken his silence about unidentified submerged objects that defy our understanding of physics and technology. The evidence he describes isn't just strange, it's impossible by our current scientific standards. This classified footage, first revealed in a popular mechanics interview, shows technology operating in our oceans that challenges everything we know about hydrodynamics, materials science, and propulsion systems. What exactly did Pentagon officials witness in those secure briefing rooms, and what does it tell us about who might possess such advanced technology? The impossible underwater object. In those secure briefing rooms, Pentagon officials witnessed something that defies conventional explanation. The classified footage shows an unidentified object near an oil rig recorded moving at 450 to 550 knots, about 518 to 633 miles per hour, underwater. For context, that's faster than our fastest torpedoes or nuclear submarines by a substantial margin. This isn't science fiction. According to Luis Elizondo, this classified footage exists, showing an object moving at speeds that completely contradict our understanding of physics. Consider our most advanced underwater technology for comparison. The fastest torpedo ever created, the Russian Virginia 111 SHK Val, reaches a maximum speed of about 200 knots. Even this remarkable weapon requires specialized technology called supercavitation to achieve such speeds. Supercavitation works by creating a large gas bubble around the torpedo, dramatically reducing water resistance. It's essentially the only way we've figured out how to move quickly underwater. Without this bubble, the drag forces would be insurmountable. Now think about this object in the Pentagon footage. It's moving at more than twice the speed of our fastest torpedo. The physics problem here is exponential, not linear. Water creates approximately 800 times more drag than air. At 550 knots, this drag becomes exponentially prohibitive. The forces involved are astronomical, yet the object moves through the water with apparent ease. What makes this footage even more perplexing is the apparent absence of any conventional propulsion system. No visible engines, no exhaust, no bubbles. Nothing that explains how this object generates the massive force needed to achieve such speeds. Our fastest underwater vehicles require enormous engines and fuel supplies just to reach a fraction of this speed. The structural challenge is equally baffling. No material known to current engineering could withstand the water pressure at such velocities without being torn apart. Water doesn't compress like air. At such extreme speeds, the pressure differential would create forces that would rip conventional materials to shreds. Titanium, carbon fiber, our strongest metal alloys, all would fail under these conditions. Perhaps most puzzling of all, according to Elizondo's account, the footage shows no cavitation bubble or wake. This defies everything we understand about hydrodynamics. Any object moving through water at high speed must displace that water, creating pressure waves and turbulence. The faster the object, the more dramatic these effects. Yet the object in this classified footage apparently moves through water as if it's not there, leaving minimal disturbance. The maneuvering capabilities are equally impossible. At such speeds, any conventional craft would require miles to make turns or change direction. The physics of momentum and inertia are unforgiving. Change direction too quickly and the G-forces would destroy the vehicle. Yet this object reportedly maintains perfect control and maneuverability despite traveling at these impossible speeds, making turns that should tear it apart. Try to imagine the energy requirements to power such movement. Our most advanced nuclear submarines, with their enormous reactors, can reach speeds of perhaps 35 knots. Moving at 550 knots would require energy production orders of magnitude greater than anything we currently possess in a mobile platform. The power density required exceeds even our theoretical limits for portable energy systems. When analyzing this footage, Pentagon officials were reportedly baffled. There's simply no conventional explanation for what they were seeing. The object violates multiple laws of physics simultaneously. It moves through water as if the normal rules of hydrodynamics don't apply. The energy required, the materials needed, the absence of cavitation. Everything about it points to technology operating beyond the boundaries of known physics. This raises profound questions. The technological gap between this object and our most advanced underwater vehicles isn't just a matter of degree, it's a fundamental difference in kind. It's comparable to showing a modern jet fighter to someone from the Middle Ages. The technologies aren't even on the same continuum. The implications extend even further. If this footage shows what Elizondo claims, we must confront the question of origin. Who possesses technology capable of such feats? The gap between this capability and our most advanced systems is so vast that it challenges the assumption that it could be human technology at all. Even if we assume some nation has made an incredible breakthrough in secret, the gap between public science and what we're seeing is too wide. Scientific advancement typically progresses incrementally. A leap of this magnitude would require multiple fundamental breakthroughs in material science, propulsion theory, energy production, and hydrodynamics, all happening in secret and all vastly beyond current theoretical limits. The Pentagon's classification of this footage at extremely high levels suggests they recognize its significance. Materials showing conventional technology, even advanced prototypes, follows standard classification protocols. The extraordinary restriction of this footage indicates it contains something that fundamentally challenges our technological paradigm. For military strategists, the implications are equally disturbing. An object with these capabilities could render our naval defenses obsolete. It could approach carriers, submarines, or coastal installations with impunity, moving too fast to track or intercept. The strategic advantage provided by such technology would be insurmountable. These extraordinary claims about underwater craft moving at impossible speeds demand careful scrutiny, especially when considering their source. The question isn't just what this object is, but who could possess such technology, and whether the person revealing this information has the credibility and background to make such assertions. The Pentagon insider, Luis Elizondo. This extraordinary underwater technology requires a credible source, and that's precisely what we have in Luis Elizondo. His background and position within the U.S. intelligence community provide crucial context for evaluating these remarkable claims. From 2010 to 2017, Elizondo served as the director of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, ATIP, at the Pentagon. This wasn't a peripheral program but one specifically tasked with investigating unidentified aerial phenomena, the government's preferred term for what the public calls UFOs. ATIP operated with black budget funding, shielding its operations from public oversight and typical congressional review processes. Elizondo's leadership role has been confirmed by both the Pentagon and Senator Harry Reid, who initiated the program's funding. In a 2021 letter, Reid explicitly validated Elizondo's position and contributions to the program. Elizondo's extensive background in intelligence adds substantial weight to his testimony. Before heading ATIP, he built a 20-year career in military intelligence, working across multiple threat assessment domains with the Department of Defense and in counterintelligence operations. As a GS-15 federal employee with top-secret, sensitive compartmented information clearance and access to special access programs, SAPs, Elizondo operated at the highest levels of government secrecy, giving him access to information that even other high-ranking military personnel couldn't see. His role at ATIP put him in a unique position to evaluate UFO evidence. The program collected data from multiple military sources, including radar systems, infrared sensors, weapon targeting pods, and eyewitness testimony from military personnel. Elizondo wasn't reviewing second-hand accounts. He was analyzing military-grade data collected from sophisticated sensor systems. The underwater footage he describes came through official channels, captured by military systems during operations. Elizondo has consistently respected classification boundaries since leaving government service. He discusses the nature of what he saw without revealing specific operational details that remain classified. This careful approach demonstrates his continued commitment to national security protocols even while advocating for greater transparency on the UAP issue. The circumstances of his resignation from the Pentagon in 2017 add additional weight to his claims. Elizondo didn't leave his position due to performance issues or internal conflicts. He resigned specifically because of what he perceived as excessive secrecy surrounding unidentified aerial phenomena. In his resignation letter to Secretary of Defense James Mattis, Elizondo expressed frustration with the bureaucratic resistance he encountered when trying to bring attention to what he and his team considered legitimate security concerns. What's particularly notable about Elizondo's claims is their consistency over time. Since leaving government service, his descriptions of the phenomena he observed have remained remarkably stable. He hasn't escalated his claims to gain attention, nor has he backed away from his core assertions despite facing skepticism. This consistency across multiple interviews suggests he's reporting genuine observations rather than embellishing for effect. The Pentagon's own actions lent credibility to Elizondo's account. Initially, the Department of Defense attempted to distance itself from him, suggesting he had no formal role in UAP investigations. However, they later reversed this position after documents obtained through Freedom of Information Act requests confirmed his leadership role at ATIP. This attempted disavowal, followed by reluctant confirmation, suggests institutional resistance to acknowledging the program's findings, rather than problems with Elizondo's credibility. Since leaving the Pentagon, Elizondo has become a key figure in bringing UAP information to public attention. He was instrumental in the public release of 3 Navy UFO videos that showed unexplained objects performing impossible aerial maneuvers. These videos, captured by F-18 Super Hornet fighter jets, were officially acknowledged by the Navy as genuine, confirming Elizondo's representations about the material. His approach to discussing USOs, unidentified submerged objects, mirrors his careful handling of aerial phenomena. He presents the underwater cases as part of a broader pattern of encounters with technology that exceeds known capabilities. The underwater dimension isn't presented as a separate phenomenon but as another environment where these objects operate with apparent ease, transitioning between air, water, and space. When discussing the classified underwater footage, Elizondo provides specific technical details that allow for analysis. He cites specific speeds, 450-550 knots, describes the absence of cavitation effects, and notes the recording circumstances. These specific details allow for technical evaluation rather than vague claims that can't be assessed. His military background gives him the technical vocabulary to describe these encounters with precision. Elizondo's credibility also derives from his restraint. He doesn't claim to know the origin of these craft, whether extraterrestrial or otherwise. Instead, he focuses on the observable capabilities that defy conventional explanation. This approach of sticking to verifiable characteristics rather than jumping to conclusions about origins reflects his intelligence background, where evidence evaluation takes precedence over speculation. His insider knowledge offers a rare glimpse into what the government knows but won't officially acknowledge about these phenomena. The compartmentalized nature of these programs means that even many high-ranking officials lack access to this information. Elizondo's position within ATIP placed him at a unique intersection where technical data, military encounters, and intelligence assessments converge. Beyond the general claims about underwater craft, Elizondo has revealed specific incidents that provide concrete examples of these anomalous capabilities. These cases demonstrate not just theoretical possibilities but actual recorded encounters between military assets and these unexplained objects. One such incident stands out for its detailed documentation and the multiple witnesses and sensors involved. The Puerto Rico incident. The most thoroughly documented case in Elizondo's portfolio comes from a 2013 incident off the coast of Puerto Rico, where a routine U.S. Customs and Border Patrol exercise captured extraordinary footage of an unidentified object. This case provides concrete evidence of the transmedium capabilities that make these phenomena so challenging to explain. The encounter began during standard Border Patrol operations near Aguadilla, Puerto Rico. Agents were conducting aerial surveillance using sophisticated infrared camera systems mounted on patrol aircraft. These thermal imaging systems are designed to detect heat signatures from potential smuggling vessels or unauthorized border crossings, providing high-resolution footage even in low-light conditions. During this operation, the surveillance systems detected something unusual. The sophisticated infrared cameras picked up an anomalous object in the vicinity of the exercise area. Initially, the operators followed standard protocol, attempting to identify what they were seeing. The object appeared to have entered a weapons training area, raising immediate security concerns. However, according to Elizondo's account, this was no ordinary aircraft or marine vessel. The tracking data revealed something of extraordinary size, an object potentially hundreds of feet in diameter. This immediately raised red flags among the technical operators monitoring the systems. The dimensions didn't match any known conventional aircraft or watercraft operating in the area. The Border Patrol personnel quickly ruled out conventional explanations based on several factors. First, the sheer size exceeded typical aircraft designs. Second, no conventional vehicle would deliberately position itself in an active training area due to the extreme danger this would pose. Third, and perhaps most importantly, the object's subsequent behavior eliminated any conventional explanation. What happened next transformed this from an unusual detection to an extraordinary encounter. The tracking system showed the object moving in ways that defied conventional aerodynamics and hydrodynamics. rather than maintaining a predictable course or responding to potential detection in ways that would make sense for either aircraft or watercraft. The object exhibited behavior that seemed to ignore physical limitations. The truly anomalous aspect of the encounter came when tracking systems captured the object's movement from air to water and back again. According to the sensor data, these transitions occurred without any of the expected physical effects that should accompany such movements. When conventional aircraft or vessels move from air to water or vice versa, they must contend with the dramatic difference in density between the two mediums. This transition creates substantial resistance, requiring significant changes in propulsion and control systems. Yet the tracking data from the Puerto Rico incident showed something entirely different. The object moved between air and water without any apparent deceleration. It maintained its velocity and trajectory as if the difference between water and air presented no obstacle whatsoever. This seamless transition between mediums defies our understanding of physics and aerodynamics. To appreciate the impossibility of this movement, consider what happens when conventional objects try to cross this boundary. When an aircraft or missile enters water from air, it experiences dramatic deceleration due to the increased density of water. The sudden resistance often requires specialized designs just to maintain structural integrity during the transition. Similarly, when an object moves from water to air, the sudden decrease in resistance creates different challenges for control and stability. The object in the Puerto Rico incident displayed none of these expected effects. It didn't slow down when entering a denser medium or speed up when entering a less dense one. It didn't create the splash or disturbance that should accompany any large object breaking the water's surface. Instead, it moved between environments as if they presented uniform resistance, or perhaps as if it used a technology that rendered these natural forces irrelevant. What makes this case particularly valuable is the quality of the data collected. Because this occurred during an active border patrol exercise, sophisticated infrared tracking systems were monitoring the area. These weren't civilian cameras or isolated radar systems, but military-grade sensor arrays designed to track objects with precision. The quality of this footage helps eliminate the possibility of equipment malfunction or data anomalies. The technical term for what was observed is transmedium travel, the ability to move between different environmental mediums without the limitations that typically affect conventional vehicles. This capability represents a significant technological advantage that no publicly known human technology possesses. Our most advanced aircraft cannot operate underwater, and our submarines cannot fly. Even specialized vehicles designed to briefly operate in both environments do so with severe limitations and require substantial modifications to transition between mediums. The implications of this capability are profound from both scientific and security perspectives. Scientifically, it suggests propulsion and materials technologies that overcome fundamental physical constraints we consider immutable. From a security standpoint, vehicles that can operate with equal capability in air, water, and potentially space would render traditional domain-based defense systems potentially obsolete. Elizondo has indicated that this Puerto Rico case is one of several incidents that demonstrate these objects don't simply operate underwater or in the air as separate phenomena. Rather, they appear to move seamlessly between environments, suggesting integrated capabilities rather than specialized adaptations. This pattern appears consistently across multiple documented encounters. This case provides a crucial piece of evidence in understanding the true nature of these phenomena. While aerial encounters with unexplained objects receive most public attention, the transmedium capability demonstrated in the Puerto Rico incident suggests something far more advanced than unusual aircraft. These objects appear to operate with equal facility across environments that require radically different engineering approaches in our technology. The Puerto Rico incident stands as one of the most technically validated cases of transmedium UAP travel on record. The combination of military-grade tracking data, multiple sensor confirmations, and the object's unusual behavior creates a compelling case that defies conventional explanation. When considered alongside other underwater UAP encounters, it suggests we're observing technology that operates according to physical principles beyond our current scientific understanding. What was initially a routine border patrol exercise became an encounter that challenges our fundamental assumptions about the limits of technology and the physics of movement through different mediums. To fully grasp the significance of what was observed that day off the coast of Puerto Rico, we need to examine exactly how these objects appear to violate the basic principles of hydrodynamics. The physics-defying capabilities. The physics challenges these objects present fundamentally rewrite what we understand about movement through water. When examining the capabilities of these underwater craft, We must first recognize the basic physical properties that make their reported behaviors so extraordinary. Water creates roughly 800 times more resistance than air. This difference isn't just significant, it's transformative in terms of the engineering challenges involved. When an object moves through water, it must displace that water, creating resistance that increases exponentially as speed increases. Double your speed, and you quadruple the resistance. This mathematical relationship imposes what engineers have long considered insurmountable barriers to high-speed underwater travel. Yet the unidentified submerged objects described by Elizondo appear to ignore these constraints entirely. According to his accounts, these objects move through water at speeds that make our fastest torpedoes look glacial by comparison. The physics problems this creates aren't minor engineering hurdles. They're fundamental violations of how we understand material objects interact with dense mediums. Perhaps the most striking physical impossibility involves cavitation. When objects move quickly underwater, the pressure differentials create areas where water effectively boils, forming vapor bubbles that then collapse violently. This process, cavitation, is both noisy and destructive. Any conventional object moving at high speed underwater creates these bubbles. Our fastest torpedoes, like the Russian Virginia 111 SHK Val, which reaches about 200 knots, actually utilize a specialized form of this phenomenon called supercavitation, deliberately creating a large gas bubble around the torpedo to reduce water resistance. The USOs described by Elizondo reportedly show no signs of cavitation whatsoever. They move through water at 450 to 550 knots without creating the vapor bubbles that physics tells us must form at such speeds. This absence of cavitation suggests these objects somehow modify the water around them or operate according to principles that negate normal fluid dynamics. The structural integrity displayed by these objects presents another seemingly impossible characteristic. Water pressure increases with depth, but pressure differentials also increase dramatically with speed. At 550 knots underwater, the pressure forces acting on any conventional material would be catastrophic. Materials science has strict limits on what substances can withstand such forces without deformation or destruction. Even our most advanced submarines, made with specialized high-strength steel alloys, operate within narrow speed parameters, typically maxing out around 35 knots, to prevent structural failure. These objects maintain perfect structural integrity despite forces that would crush any known material. They show no signs of stress or deformation despite moving at speeds where the pressure differentials should tear them apart. This suggests either materials far beyond our current capabilities or some technology that mitigates these forces in ways we don't understand. Some of the most perplexing reports involve objects that stop instantly underwater without any apparent deceleration period. This capability violates basic Newtonian physics. An object moving at high speed carries enormous momentum. This momentum cannot simply disappear. It must be transferred or converted through some process that requires time and distance. Even emergency braking in air requires significant distance. Underwater, where resistance is higher, instant stops should be even more impossible. Yet multiple military sensor systems have reportedly captured USOs that stop without the expected deceleration curve. This behavior suggests technology that either negates inertia or manipulates mass in ways our physics considers impossible. The energy that should be dissipated during deceleration simply vanishes with no apparent thermal or kinetic effects. Maneuverability at high speeds represents another physics violation. As speed increases underwater, the forces acting on control surfaces like rudders or fins become enormous. At very high speeds, conventional steering mechanisms become ineffective or even destructive. Submarine design accommodates this limitation by restricting tight maneuvers to lower speeds. The faster a conventional vessel moves underwater, the wider its turning radius must be. The USOs demonstrate perfect control and maneuverability despite traveling at speeds where steering should be impossible. They reportedly make tight turns and rapid course changes that would tear conventional craft apart. The G-forces generated by such maneuvers would be lethal to any human occupants and destructive to any known materials. The energy requirements for these movements present another insurmountable barrier for known technology. Moving at 550 knots underwater would require energy generation far beyond anything we currently possess in a mobile platform. Our nuclear submarines, with their massive reactors, struggle to maintain speeds of 35 to 40 knots. The power needed to overcome water resistance at 550 knots exceeds our current capabilities by orders of magnitude. The USOs show no visible propulsion exhaust, no thermal signatures consistent with enormous energy generation, and no apparent methodology for overcoming these energy barriers. They move as if water resistance simply doesn't apply to them. Some reports indicate these objects transition between air and water without changing speed or showing effects from the density change. This transmedium travel capability suggests technology that renders the difference between mediums irrelevant. No known material can move from air to water without experiencing dramatic forces at the boundary between these mediums. Yet these objects reportedly cross this barrier as if it doesn't exist. When taken together, these capabilities point to technology operating according to principles beyond our scientific understanding. The gap between what these objects can do and what our most advanced technology can achieve isn't just wide. It represents a fundamental difference in the underlying physics. Our fastest underwater vehicles rely on principles of hydrodynamics that these objects appear to ignore completely. The physics-defying nature of these underwater craft points to something beyond conventional classification. They don't just outperform our technology, they operate as if governed by a different set of physical laws. Whether this represents classified breakthrough technology or something with non-human origin, one thing remains clear. These objects demonstrate capabilities that current science considers impossible. While these theoretical discussions help us understand the magnitude of what we're observing, the most compelling evidence comes from specific documented encounters. Among these, the Oil Rig stands out for its technical validation. One particular case stands out in the USO Evidence catalog for its exceptional documentation and multiple verification sources. Elizondo has repeatedly referenced an encounter that occurred at an offshore oil platform, which provides some of the most compelling technical evidence for these anomalous underwater craft. The oil rig provided an ideal vantage point for this encounter. These massive offshore structures extend from the ocean floor to well above the surface, with personnel monitoring both air and sea traffic as part of standard safety protocols. The platforms typically maintain sophisticated equipment for environmental monitoring, communications, and security. This combination of human observers and technical sensors created perfect conditions for documenting something truly extraordinary. According to Elizondo's account, workers on the platform first noticed unusual activity in the waters surrounding their structure. Initial observations likely triggered standard protocols for unknown vessels approaching the exclusion zone that typically surrounds such installations. However, what the workers observed quickly proved to be something beyond conventional explanation. The object moved through the water at speeds that immediately ruled out known submersibles. As the workers continued their observation, they managed to record the phenomenon using the platform's monitoring systems. This wasn't captured on personal cell phones or consumer cameras but industrial-grade monitoring equipment designed to function reliably in harsh maritime environments. What makes this case particularly compelling is the presence of tracking data overlaid on the footage. According to Elizondo, this data confirmed speeds between 450 to 550 knots underwater, roughly equivalent to 518 to 633 miles per hour. For perspective, the fastest known torpedo reaches approximately 200 knots, and conventional submarines typically operate at a small fraction of that speed. The object was moving at nearly 3 times the speed of our fastest underwater technology. The tracking system's confirmation of these speeds eliminates many potential explanations. Natural phenomena don't move with such precision or maintain such velocities underwater. Camera or sensor glitches typically don't generate consistent tracking data across multiple systems. The corroboration between what workers visually observed and what the sensors recorded creates a much stronger case than either would provide independently. Multiple witnesses observed the event simultaneously, providing consistent accounts of what transpired. This group observation significantly reduces the likelihood of perceptual errors or individual misinterpretation. When different people from various technical backgrounds and perspectives all report the same anomalous features, the credibility of the observation increases substantially. Similarly, multiple sensors recorded the event, not just a single camera or radar system. This sensor redundancy is crucial for ruling out equipment malfunction. Different types of sensors operating on different principles all detected the same object, creating a comprehensive data set that would be nearly impossible to attribute to coincidental technical failures across multiple systems. Perhaps most baffling about the oil rig case is the object's perfect control despite its extraordinary speed. At 550 knots underwater, any conventional craft would experience enormous forces that would compromise structural integrity and maneuverability. Water creates exponentially greater resistance than air, making high-speed control underwater vastly more difficult than similar maneuvers in the atmosphere. Yet the object demonstrated precision movement that defied these physical limitations. The duration of the encounter also separates it from many other USO reports. Rather than a brief sighting lasting seconds, this event persisted long enough for thorough documentation. The extended observation period allowed workers to alert colleagues, verify what they were seeing through multiple means, and capture substantial footage before the object departed. This wasn't a momentary anomaly but a sustained presence in the vicinity of the platform. The disappearance of the object proved as mysterious as its appearance. According to accounts, it didn't gradually accelerate away or surface like a conventional submarine might. Instead, it simply vanished from the area, either through extraordinary speed or some other means that the tracking systems couldn't follow. This sudden departure adds another layer of technological mystery to the already inexplicable capabilities displayed. What happened to this compelling evidence? According to Elizondo, the footage and sensor data were classified at extremely high levels. This classification wasn't routine security protocol but reflected the extraordinary nature of what had been captured. The material was restricted to those with appropriate security clearances, individuals with a specialized technical background to analyze the capabilities displayed and assess potential implications. What's particularly notable is that while several naval UFO videos, the famous Nimitz, Go Fast, and Gimbal encounters, were eventually declassified and released to the public in 2020, the underwater cases like the Oil Rig encounter remain at much higher classification levels. This disparity suggests that the underwater dimension of these phenomena may contain even more sensitive information than their aerial counterparts. The heightened classification suggests the material contains information with significant national security implications, capabilities that potentially challenge military technological superiority. Some whistleblower accounts allege deeper programs within the intelligence community dedicated to studying these underwater phenomena, with access restricted even beyond typical special access programs. Navy sonar operators have reported tracking unidentified underwater objects moving at impossible speeds, but these records remain heavily redacted when released through Freedom of Information Act requests. One notable example involved a redacted Navy sonar image showing an object accelerating from stationary to several hundred knots in seconds, a capability no known submarine possesses. The Oil Rig case represents one of the most technically validated USO encounters precisely because it combines multiple evidence types: visual observation by trained personnel, sophisticated sensor recordings, tracking data confirming extraordinary performance metrics, extended duration allowing thorough documentation, and multiple witness corroboration. Each of these elements strengthens the case and eliminates potential conventional explanations. The combination of visual evidence and sensor data makes this case nearly impossible to explain through conventional means. Natural phenomena don't travel at 550 knots underwater with perfect directional control. Human technology remains centuries away from such capabilities. Equipment malfunctions don't create consistent readings across multiple independent systems. The process of elimination leaves few satisfying explanations within our current technological paradigm. This incident exemplifies why the underwater dimension of the UAP phenomenon demands serious scientific attention. The Oil Rig case doesn't just suggest unknown technology. It documents capabilities that fundamental physics suggests should be impossible. The gap between what was observed and what current science can explain represents not just an incremental advance but a potential paradigm shift in our understanding of what's physically possible. If we wanted to build a craft capable of moving through water at 550 knots, what would that actually require? The engineering challenges appear insurmountable with our current understanding of physics and materials science. The technological implications. To create a craft capable of moving at such speeds underwater would require technological breakthroughs across multiple scientific domains simultaneously. The engineering challenges aren't just difficult. They represent fundamental barriers in our understanding of physics and materials science. The technological implications of USOs moving at 450 to 550 knots underwater, staggering. Water's density, approximately 800 times greater than air, transforms every aspect of vehicle design. As an object moves through water, it must constantly displace this dense medium, creating resistance that increases exponentially with speed. Double your speed underwater, and you quadruple the resistance. At 550 knots, this resistance becomes astronomical. Our fastest underwater technology, the Russian Virginia 111 SHK Val torpedo, reaches around 200 knots using supercavitation. This technique creates a large gas bubble around the torpedo, allowing it to move through this gas rather than directly through water. Even with this innovative approach, The torpedo requires enormous energy, offers minimal steering capability, and can only maintain this speed for very short distances. Yet the objects reported by Elizondo travel nearly 3 times faster without apparent supercavitation bubbles. The materials challenge alone seems impossible to overcome. At such extreme speeds underwater, any conventional material would experience molecular degradation due to water pressure and friction. Water doesn't compress like air, meaning the forces acting on the hull of such a craft would be extreme. These forces wouldn't just stress the material, they would tear apart its molecular bonds. Even our strongest materials like titanium alloys, carbon fiber composites, or advanced ceramics would fail under these conditions. The materials would need to withstand not just the enormous pressure but also the heating that occurs from friction at these speeds. Water transfers heat more efficiently than air, creating thermal stresses that would compromise structural integrity. The energy requirements present another seemingly impossible hurdle. The power needed to overcome water resistance at 550 knots exceeds anything we can currently generate in a mobile platform. Our nuclear submarines, with their large reactors, struggle to reach 40 knots. The exponential relationship between speed and power means that moving at 550 knots would require energy generation orders of magnitude greater than our current capabilities. For comparison, the power required to move a submarine-sized object at 550 knots underwater would likely exceed the output of multiple nuclear power plants. Creating a power source compact enough to fit within a mobile platform yet powerful enough to generate this energy represents a technological leap we cannot currently envision. The control systems for such a craft present equally baffling challenges. At 550 knots underwater, the forces acting on any control surfaces would be enormous. Conventional steering mechanisms would fail catastrophically. The pressures involved would make traditional rudders or dive planes ineffective or destructive. The engineering solutions needed to maintain directional control at these speeds underwater would require entirely new approaches to hydrodynamics. The acceleration forces experienced during maneuvers at such speeds would create G-forces lethal to any human occupants. A tight turn at 550 knots underwater would generate acceleration forces that would instantly kill humans inside. Even our most advanced fighter pilots, wearing specialized G-suits, can only withstand around 9 G for brief periods. The turns reportedly executed by these underwater objects would generate forces far exceeding this threshold. The engineering consensus on creating craft with these capabilities is sobering. Most experts estimate we're decades or even centuries away from approaching the technology needed for 450 to 550 knot underwater travel with precise control. The gap isn't just a matter of incremental improvements to existing systems. It would require multiple revolutionary breakthroughs across different scientific domains. These technological implications force us to consider uncomfortable possibilities. Either some nation has made multiple simultaneous breakthroughs in propulsion theory, material science, energy generation, and control systems, all while maintaining perfect secrecy, or we're observing technology with origins beyond conventional human development. The propulsion system required would need to operate on principles fundamentally different from conventional hydrodynamics. Rather than pushing against water, it might need to manipulate the properties of water itself, perhaps reducing local density or altering the medium's physical properties. No current propulsion theory achieves this, suggesting principles not yet discovered or mastered by mainstream science. The materials would need properties beyond anything in our current engineering toolkit. They would require molecular structures that resist the enormous pressures and temperatures while maintaining perfect structural integrity. The combination of strength, heat resistance, and durability required exceeds anything in our materials science literature. Energy generation would need a revolution beyond current physics. The power density required for such propulsion exceeds our most advanced theoretical systems. Even theoretical fusion reactors wouldn't provide the necessary power-to-weight ratio. The energy source would need efficiency orders of magnitude beyond our current capabilities. The control systems would require computational power and response times far exceeding current technology. The split-second adjustments needed to maintain stability at these speeds underwater would outpace even our fastest supercomputers. The entire control paradigm would need to operate on principles different from conventional vehicle dynamics. When analysts examine the full spectrum of technologies required to create craft matching the reported capabilities, the conclusion becomes unavoidable. These objects demonstrate technology operating beyond the cutting edge of human scientific understanding. The gap between these capabilities and our most advanced systems isn't just wide, it's fundamental. This technological assessment points to two primary possibilities. Whether classified breakthrough technologies exist that represent quantum leaps beyond public science across multiple domains simultaneously, or we're observing technology with non-human origin. Both conclusions have profound implications for our understanding of technology and potentially our place in the universe. What makes this situation even more perplexing is how differently the government treats information about these underwater phenomena compared to their aerial counterparts. A curious asymmetry exists in how officials handle different types of UAP encounters, raising questions about what makes the underwater cases so sensitive. The pattern of secrecy. The classification levels applied to underwater phenomena reveal a calculated assessment by military and intelligence officials. While aerial UFO videos like the Nimitz, Go Fast, and gimbal footage have been declassified and officially released, underwater UFO encounters remain concealed behind much higher security barriers. This stark contrast in information handling provides important clues about how these phenomena are perceived within classified circles. According to Elizondo, the footage of underwater objects moving at 450 to 550 knots is maintained under significantly higher security classifications than their aerial counterparts. This isn't a minor bureaucratic distinction. Classification levels directly reflect the perceived sensitivity and potential national security implications of the information being protected. The heightened protection for underwater cases suggests they contain information that officials consider substantially more sensitive or potentially threatening. The Pentagon has taken measured steps toward transparency regarding aerial phenomena. In 2020, the Department of Defense officially released 3 Navy videos showing unexplained aerial encounters. They established a UAP task force to investigate these incidents and later created the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO, to broaden the investigation scope. Yet when questioned specifically about underwater phenomena, the same officials typically offer no comment or actively redirect the conversation back to aerial encounters. This selective transparency pattern becomes even more apparent when examining the 2021 preliminary assessment on UAP and subsequent reports. These documents acknowledge Transmedium capabilities, objects moving between air and water, but provide virtually no details about underwater operations specifically. The acknowledgement of the capability without elaboration on the underwater component represents a carefully constructed partial disclosure. Naval operations encounter these objects with surprising regularity. Submarine crews, surface vessel personnel, and specialized underwater monitoring systems repeatedly detect anomalous underwater phenomena. According to multiple sources with backgrounds in naval operations, these encounters occur frequently enough that many crews have developed unofficial protocols for dealing with them, despite official denial of their significance. Military personnel reporting underwater anomalies face additional hurdles compared to their counterparts reporting aerial phenomena. Naval crews describing underwater encounters often find their reports subject to higher classification levels immediately, restricting who can access this information. Personnel undergo more intensive debriefings, and in some cases, witnesses report being required to sign additional non-disclosure agreements specific to the underwater aspects of their encounters. This systematic pattern of greater restriction for underwater cases versus aerial ones suggests a deliberate policy distinction. The phenomenon itself isn't being treated uniformly across environments. Instead, underwater capabilities appear to receive special handling, indicating they may reveal more sensitive aspects of these objects' technology or purpose. One compelling explanation for this heightened secrecy involves technological significance. The physics of water movement creates far greater engineering challenges than air travel. An object demonstrating 550-knot underwater speeds with perfect control reveals more about its technological capabilities than the same object flying at equivalent or even greater speeds through air. The underwater environment forces technology to overcome exponentially greater resistance, pressure differentials, and material stress, making the capabilities demonstrated there more revealing about the underlying technology. Naval intelligence has potentially collected far more USO data than publicly acknowledged. The world's oceans are continuously monitored by sophisticated sonar networks originally designed to track submarine movements. These systems collect enormous amounts of acoustic data, with operators reporting transient sonar contacts that move at speeds and depths impossible for conventional submarines. This infrastructure likely captures USO movements regularly, building a dataset that remains entirely classified. The strategic significance of ocean dominance may also explain the secrecy disparity. Since World War II, naval superiority has been a cornerstone of American military power projection. Technologies that can move freely through water at speeds that render our most advanced underwater detection and weapon systems obsolete would represent a fundamental strategic vulnerability. Acknowledging such technology exists, especially if it can't be countered, could undermine confidence in naval forces that form the backbone of global military presence. The heightened secrecy surrounding USOs indicates they may represent a more significant technological or national security concern than their aerial counterparts. Objects operating with impossible capabilities underwater directly challenge strategic domains where the military has invested trillions of dollars in maintaining superiority. The ability to overcome water resistance at 550 knots demonstrates physics-defying capabilities more conclusively than similar aerial performance. This secrecy pattern suggests underwater phenomena may reveal more about these objects' origins and capabilities than aerial encounters. Water provides a more demanding environment that requires more advanced technology to navigate effectively. The seamless transition between water and air, reported in multiple military encounters, demonstrates capabilities far beyond any known human technology. These technological implications may be precisely what the highest classification levels aim to protect from public or adversary knowledge. Internal Pentagon documents obtained through Freedom of Information Act requests have occasionally referenced underwater anomalies, but these references typically appear in heavily redacted sections. The pattern of redaction itself tells a story. Underwater capabilities consistently receive the heaviest censorship, with entire pages sometimes redacted when discussing specific performance metrics or technical characteristics observed underwater. The 2024 Pentagon report acknowledged UAPs with Transmedium capabilities while carefully avoiding explicit confirmation of their nature. This carefully worded acknowledgement represents a minimalist disclosure, admitting the capability exists while revealing essentially nothing about the underwater component of these encounters. The report emphasized the need for more data and scientific analysis, particularly highlighting the limitations of current collection methods in the underwater domain. According to former Department of Defense official Luis Elizondo, the government has conducted secret UAP crash retrieval programs aimed at identifying and reverse engineering these craft. While not explicitly mentioning underwater recoveries, the heightened secrecy surrounding USOs suggests these underwater technologies may be of particular interest in such programs, potentially explaining the stricter information controls. The pattern of secrecy surrounding underwater UFO encounters reflects a calculated risk assessment by defense officials. Whatever these objects represent, whether advanced foreign technology, non-human technology, or something else entirely, their underwater capabilities appear to reveal aspects of their nature that officials consider too sensitive for public disclosure. The technological leap demonstrated underwater exceeds the already impressive capabilities shown in air, suggesting these objects may represent an even greater technological gap than previously acknowledged. This raises a profound question about where we should be looking for non-human intelligence, perhaps not in the stars above, if the government but in the depths below. Strict classification around underwater phenomena. We must ask, what makes our oceans so strategically significant as an operational domain for these advanced objects? Earth's oceans remain one of the last great frontiers on our planet. Vast, largely unexplored regions that could serve as the perfect operational base for technology far beyond our own. The underwater environment offers advantages that neither land nor air can provide, making it an ideal domain for concealment, resource acquisition, and long-term presence. The numbers alone tell a striking story about our lack of understanding of the underwater world. We've mapped less than 20% of the ocean floor in detail, despite oceans covering more than 70% of Earth's surface. The Mariana Trench plunges to depths of nearly 36,000 feet, yet fewer humans have visited its deepest point than have walked on the moon. Our most advanced submarines can only descend to around 2,000 feet, leaving the vast majority of ocean depth completely inaccessible to direct human exploration. This lack of access and understanding creates an ideal environment for concealment. Any sufficiently advanced technology could operate throughout vast regions of our oceans with minimal risk of detection or interference. While we've developed sophisticated satellite systems that can monitor virtually every square inch of Earth's land surface, these same technologies cannot penetrate ocean depths. Water effectively blocks most electromagnetic radiation, creating a natural shield against our most advanced detection capabilities. The underwater environment offers numerous strategic advantages beyond simple concealment. Pressure increases by approximately 1 atmosphere for every 33 feet of depth. At the deepest ocean trenches, pressures exceed 1,000 atmospheres. forces that would instantly crush any conventional human technology. These extreme conditions create natural barriers that prevent human intrusion, effectively securing vast regions from our interference. Temperature gradients throughout ocean depths provide additional challenges for human exploration but potential resources for advanced technology. The thermocline, the layer where temperature drops rapidly with increasing depth, creates distinct environmental zones with different properties. Advanced technology might utilize these temperature differentials for energy generation or operational requirements, turning what we consider hostile conditions into advantageous resources. Water itself provides abundant hydrogen, the most common element in the universe and a potential fuel source for exotic propulsion systems. If advanced technology utilizes hydrogen fusion or other hydrogen-based energy systems, the oceans would provide nearly limitless fuel. This combination of concealment and resource availability makes underwater environments potentially more practical than space for long-term operations. Military encounters have documented objects moving between water and air seamlessly, a capability that defies our current technological understanding. This transmedium travel suggests technology that isn't just adapted to underwater conditions but masters them completely. The ability to move between environments without apparent difficulty indicates a level of technological advancement that makes our most sophisticated vehicles seem primitive by comparison. The strategic implications of these capabilities are profound. No human interceptor can match a 550-knot underwater speed. Our fastest torpedoes reach only about 200 knots, and only for short distances. This creates an insurmountable tactical advantage for these objects. Naval sonar operators have reported anomalous contacts near nuclear submarines, particularly in deep water training areas off Puerto Rico and in the vicinity of carrier strike groups, as noted in the Nimitz encounters. These intrusions represent a significant security concern, as they demonstrate the ability to approach our most sensitive military assets undetected. The underwater environment also offers acoustic advantages. Sound travels approximately 4 times faster through water than through air and can propagate over much greater distances. An advanced civilization might utilize sophisticated acoustic systems for communication, sensing, or other purposes in ways that would be undetectable to our current monitoring capabilities. The unique properties of underwater sound propagation create opportunities for communication networks completely invisible to conventional detection methods. Beyond the physical advantages, the psychological barrier between humans and deep ocean environments may be equally valuable. Our species evolved on land, and despite our maritime history, the deep ocean remains fundamentally alien to human perception. We cannot survive there without extensive technological support, and we have an instinctive discomfort with deep water. This psychological barrier may provide additional concealment value. We simply don't look as carefully at what might be happening in the depths as we do at the skies above. Historical accounts of USOs date back centuries, appearing in naval records, maritime laws, and traditional stories from seafaring cultures worldwide. These accounts, though varying in detail and reliability, share common descriptions of objects moving through water at impossible speeds, entering and exiting the ocean without expected physical effects, and demonstrating capabilities beyond any known technology of their time. The consistency of these reports across cultures and time periods suggests a long-term presence rather than recent phenomena. The persistence of these accounts across centuries raises profound questions about the nature of these objects. If non-human technology has been operating in our oceans for hundreds or thousands of years, the ocean depths may represent not just an occasional environment but their primary domain. Rather than visitors from elsewhere occasionally entering our oceans, these objects may be permanent residents for whom the underwater environment is home. From a strategic perspective, establishing underwater bases would be far more practical than space-based alternatives. Ocean depths provide natural radiation shielding, pressure containment, temperature regulation, and abundant resources. All factors that would require enormous technological effort to replicate in space. The energy requirements for maintaining underwater bases would be substantially lower than orbital or lunar facilities, making them more sustainable for long-term operations. The capabilities demonstrated by USOs suggest technology specifically adapted to underwater operations rather than space vehicles occasionally entering water. These capabilities appear optimized for the unique challenges and opportunities presented by Earth's oceans, indicating potential evolutionary adaptation to this environment. What makes this hypothesis particularly compelling is the pattern of encounters. These aren't random, isolated incidents but show systematic characteristics that suggest organized activity. What if The objects moving through our oceans at impossible speeds aren't just passing through. The underwater network evidence suggests these objects aren't random visitors but part of something more permanent and organized. The geographical distribution of USO sightings reveals striking patterns that challenge the notion of occasional transits. Instead, the data points toward a systematic presence, an organized network with permanent underwater infrastructure. Over decades, naval intelligence has documented USO encounters clustered around specific underwater locations. These aren't random distribution patterns that would indicate occasional visitors. Instead, they show repeated activity in precise areas, creating hotspots of USO observations that remain consistent over time. This geographical consistency cannot be explained by chance encounters or misidentified natural phenomena. Some of the most compelling evidence comes from sonar operators who have detected anomalous structures in deep ocean regions. These structures sometimes appear on mapping systems only to disappear during subsequent scans. Conventional underwater features, seamounts, ridges, or natural formations don't vanish from sonar. Their consistent appearance on mapping systems is one of the foundational principles of underwater navigation. Objects that appear and disappear challenge our understanding of what's actually present in these deep water environments. The disappearing structures suggest technology capable of either becoming invisible to sonar or physically relocating between mapping missions. Both possibilities imply capabilities far beyond conventional explanation. Active sonar can typically penetrate the water column to detect solid objects based on sound wave reflection. Objects that can avoid this detection while still maintaining physical presence would require either advanced cloaking technology or materials that absorb rather than reflect sonar waves. Certain oceanic regions have demonstrated significantly higher concentrations of USO activity over time. These regions often share particular characteristics. They typically feature deep underwater trenches, complex underwater terrain, or proximity to strategic human activities. The non-random distribution suggests these areas serve as operational hubs for whatever intelligence controls these objects. One pattern repeatedly documented involves objects being tracked as they emerge from specific deep underwater locations, conduct operations in shallower waters or airspace, and then return to these same deep points. Naval tracking systems have recorded these movements over decades, with objects consistently returning to the same general areas. This behavior mirrors how human submarines operate from established bases rather than how transient visitors would behave. The depth of these apparent return points often exceeds the crush depth of our most advanced submarines. Areas like the Puerto Rico Trench, Mariana Trench, and certain regions of the South China Sea show consistent USO activity emerging from depths where no human technology could establish permanent structures. The pressure at these depths would crush conventional materials, suggesting either temporary visitation or the use of materials and technology that can withstand pressures beyond our engineering capabilities. What makes these patterns particularly significant is their persistence across decades. The same underwater regions that showed unusual activity in the 1950s continue to generate similar reports today. This temporal consistency rules out temporary phenomena or one-time events. Natural explanations like underwater gas releases, seismic activity, or bioluminescent organisms would not maintain such precise geographical consistency over such extended periods. Naval intelligence analysts have reportedly mapped these patterns, creating classified charts of underwater regions with anomalous activity. These charts allegedly show network-like connections between hotspots, suggesting coordinated movement between established locations rather than random appearances. The structured nature of these movements often forms precise patterns that natural phenomena wouldn't create. Some of the most compelling cases involve multiple objects operating in apparent coordination. Rather than single USOs, naval sensors have occasionally detected formations of objects moving in precise patterns that suggest organized operations. These formations sometimes maintain perfect geometric arrangements even while moving at high speeds through water, behavior that indicates intelligent control rather than natural phenomena. The underwater regions with highest USO activity often connect to areas of significant military or technological importance. Underwater communication cable routes, nuclear submarine bases, and major naval facilities frequently report unusually high incidences of unexplained underwater objects. This correlation suggests intentional monitoring rather than coincidental presence. Military personnel who have tracked these objects report behavior consistent with reconnaissance operations. The objects appear to observe human activities, sometimes maintaining position near naval exercises or underwater infrastructure before departing. This behavior suggests purposeful information gathering rather than random movement. Some of the most sensitive USO data involves underwater listening posts detecting acoustic signatures that don't match any known submarine or marine animal. These acoustic signatures sometimes remain stationary for weeks or months before moving, suggesting long-term positioning in specific underwater locations. The sounds don't propagate like known mechanical or biological sources, indicating fundamentally different generation mechanisms. The systematic nature of USO movements often displays what analysts describe as patrol patterns, regular routes revisited with timing too precise to be accidental. These patterns sometimes correlate with human naval operations, changing in response to our underwater activities. This responsive behavior strongly indicates intelligence rather than natural phenomena or misidentified conventional objects. The evidence points to a permanent presence rather than occasional visitations. The geographical consistency, the return to specific locations, the coordinated movements between established points, and the long-term persistence of these patterns collectively suggest something that has established itself in our oceans rather than merely passing through. This has profound implications for how we understand the UFO phenomenon. If what we're observing isn't random appearances but an organized network operating continuously in our oceans, we must reconsider fundamental assumptions about the nature and origin of these objects. The systematic nature of USO activity suggests organized operations that have been ongoing for decades or longer, operations conducted with purpose and intelligence. As scientific inquiry continues, we need to focus our attention not just on the skies above but on the vast, unexplored depths below. Our oceans may be the key to unlocking this mystery. Consider subscribing for expert analysis on classified encounters and the latest developments in this field. The existence of such an underwater network raises critical questions about security and sovereignty in our oceans, questions that have defined military power throughout human history. The national security implications. Military strategists have long understood that technological superiority in the oceans translates directly to global power. Naval dominance has defined military power for centuries. Control of the seas has determined the outcome of major conflicts, facilitated global trade, and established geopolitical hierarchies. Nations have invested trillions in building naval forces capable of projecting power and protecting maritime interests. The United States Navy, with its aircraft carriers, nuclear submarines, and advanced weapons systems, exemplifies this commitment to oceanic superiority. This naval strategy assumes that we understand and can counter any threat that might emerge from the seas. USOs fundamentally challenge that assumption. The objects described by Elizondo and others demonstrate capabilities that make our most advanced naval defenses potentially obsolete. When objects can travel underwater at 450 to 550 knots, more than twice as fast as our fastest torpedoes, the strategic calculus changes dramatically. This speed disparity isn't a minor technical advantage but a complete paradigm shift in what's possible in the underwater domain. Consider the tactical implications. Naval warfare relies on the ability to detect, track, and intercept potential threats. Our current sensor systems, primarily sonar-based, function on principles of sound propagation through water. Yet USOs reportedly operate with minimal acoustic signatures, despite their high speeds. This suggests either materials or propulsion systems that don't create the expected sound profiles, potentially rendering them invisible to conventional detection methods. The speed differential creates an insurmountable tactical problem. Even if our systems could detect these objects, we have no weapons capable of intercepting something moving at 550 knots underwater. Our fastest torpedoes would be hopelessly outpaced. This speed advantage means USOs could approach any naval asset, including aircraft carriers or ballistic missile submarines, with impunity. The defense systems designed to protect these assets operate on assumptions about maximum approach speeds that USOs completely invalidate. Depth capabilities present another significant vulnerability. Our most advanced submarines operate within specific depth parameters due to hull pressure limitations. The deepest diving combat submarines can reach approximately 1,600 feet. Beyond these depths, the crushing pressure makes operation impossible with current materials and designs. Yet USOs have been tracked operating at much greater depths, accessing regions of the ocean that remain completely beyond our reach. This depth advantage provides them with sanctuaries completely inaccessible to our forces. They can retreat to regions where we cannot follow, making pursuit or interception impossible. This capability negates the traditional undersea warfare advantage submarines have provided. the ability to hide beneath the thermocline layer and use deep waters as concealment. Perhaps most concerning is the transmedium capability demonstrated by these objects. Our defense systems are environment-specific. Air defense systems target aerial threats. Naval defenses counter surface and subsurface threats. This separation creates inherent vulnerabilities at the boundaries between domains. Objects that can move seamlessly between water and air exploit these boundaries, potentially transitioning between domains to avoid detection or interception. This transmedium capability means an object could approach underwater, where sonar detection is limited to relatively short ranges, then suddenly emerge into air to complete an approach. Current defense systems aren't designed to maintain tracking across this medium transition, creating a critical vulnerability in our integrated air and naval defense architecture. The apparent surveillance interest these objects show in our military activities raises additional concerns. Multiple encounters have occurred near military exercises, nuclear facilities, and naval bases. This pattern suggests deliberate observation of our capabilities, tactics, and technological systems. This isn't random presence but appears to be intentional monitoring of our most sensitive operations and installations. According to Luis Elizondo, the U.S. government has documented UAP encounters with alarming frequency near nuclear assets. In one notable instance from 1967, a UFO seemingly disabled nuclear-armed missiles at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana. This pattern suggests that USOs may be deliberately surveilling sensitive military installations, potentially to assess or even compromise critical national security infrastructure. The technology gap between these objects and our most advanced systems is so vast that developing effective countermeasures may be impossible with current capabilities. We cannot outrun them, hide from them, or intercept them with existing systems. This asymmetric advantage renders traditional deterrence concepts potentially irrelevant. How do you deter something you cannot credibly threaten? Elizondo has stated that the U.S. government is engaged in a secretive arms race to reverse engineer UAP technologies. He also indicated that advanced technologies not made by the U.S. government or any other government are monitoring sensitive military installations around the globe. This implies a potential threat from unknown actors with superior technological capabilities. The national security establishment's response to these encounters appears fragmented. Journalist Michael Schellenberger testified that elements within the military and intelligence community may be violating their constitutional duty to inform Congress of their operations regarding UAPs. He also mentioned a secret program called Immaculate Constellation that allegedly collects UFO and UAP reports from military personnel and sensor data, then sequesters them from the rest of the government and military. This information compartmentalization undermines coordinated response capabilities. If different agencies and military branches aren't sharing encounter data, developing comprehensive threat assessments becomes impossible. The lack of transparent information sharing suggests either institutional dysfunction or deliberate information control for purposes not publicly acknowledged. USOs represent a paradigm shift in how we must think about oceanic security and sovereignty. Traditional concepts of territorial waters and exclusive economic zones assume the ability to monitor and control access to these regions. Objects that can move with impunity throughout our waters, at speeds we cannot match and depths we cannot reach, fundamentally challenge these sovereignty concepts. The implications extend beyond military concerns to broader national security questions. If these objects represent technology from an unknown intelligence, their interest in our nuclear and military capabilities may indicate strategic assessment. Their technological superiority creates a fundamental vulnerability that cannot be addressed through conventional military means. This forces a reassessment of security paradigms built on assumptions of technological parity or superiority. As we confront the reality of these underwater phenomena, we must look beyond traditional security frameworks to understand what their presence might mean. The underwater dimension of the UFO phenomenon may hold answers that have eluded us in our study of aerial encounters alone. Looking deeper into these underwater mysteries reveals a critical path forward. The evidence Elizondo presents demands serious scientific and security consideration beyond the constraints of traditional thinking. The capabilities demonstrated by USOs, 450 to 550 knot speeds without cavitation, seamless medium transitions, and perfect control, reveal technology operating according to principles that challenge our fundamental understanding of physics. These oceanic encounters provide concrete, sensor-recorded evidence that may ultimately help us understand their origin, technological principles, and purpose. As former Pentagon officials continue sharing their experiences, the classified barriers surrounding USOs gradually become more transparent. Each new revelation brings us closer to comprehending the true nature of these mysterious craft operating beneath our oceans and their profound implications for humanity's understanding of technology and potentially our place in the universe.